When people think of psychopaths, they only think of serial killers like Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, or John Wayne Gacy. But the truth is that there are many more people with this disorder who remain under the radar. Many people know nothing about this disorder, or if they do, they think only in terms of people who have conspicuously broken the law many times over, and who, if caught, will be imprisoned. Most psychopaths are not incarcerated. They are out here in the world with you and me. Psychopaths have no conscience. They lack the ability to care or to feel empathy or guilt. If psychopaths maintain ties to other people, it is only because they see them as a possession, tool, or resource. But for now, I'm going to share with you a story about a lucky couple and a psychopath serial killer. This story really happened and is highly distressing, so viewer discretion is advised.
In the 1970s, a young woman and a young man were on their very first date together, and it wasn't going very well. It wasn't going badly. It was just really, really awkward. They just were not meshing at all. So, as they're getting ready to leave and retire for the night, the guy's thinking to himself, I have nothing to lose here. We're probably not going to go on a second date. He says to the woman, hey, do you want to not go home right now and actually come on a hike with me? And he goes, I know this sounds like a terrible idea, but hear me out. I go mountain climbing in this area called Provo Canyon. It's not that far from here. There are these beautiful trails that lead up the side of a canyon to these amazing scenic overlooks. And tonight, it's a new moon, so there's great visibility. And I just think that you might enjoy it. At first, the woman is obviously a little bit hesitant, but when he says, look, I go hiking there at night all the time. I love it out there, and I promise. If there's any weirdness, if you don't like being there, we'll just turn around and leave. It's totally safe. After a little bit of coaxing, she finally says, okay, you know what? That sounds fun, let's go do it. So their date that had been really awkward suddenly became really exciting, and the two of them were kind of thrilled, like, look at us making our way up for a nighttime hike through Provo Canyon. They arrived at the mouth of this canyon, and they're both obviously excited. They hop out, and they start walking up this trail that brings them into a heavily forested section of the canyon. Now, to this point, the guy felt like this was a really great idea. He really had gone hiking here a bunch, and he really did know the area well. But as the trail brought them into the forested area, the guy remembers feeling this overwhelming sense of dread. He didn't know why. It was just like an overwhelming sense of anxiety that something bad was going to happen to them. But he had worked so hard to convince his date to come with him, and convinced her it was safe, that he's not about to let on to her that there was anything wrong with what they were doing. So he put on his strong face and just kind of suppressed it, and just kept on walking and holding her hand tight. They continued their walk, but his sense of dread would just build and build, to the point where he was really on edge. And what he didn't know, but would find out later, is that his date, the woman, she also had this horrible sense of dread as soon as they went into the forest. But she didn't want to tell him, because she didn't want to seem like a party pooper, because he seemed really excited about it. At some point, as they're walking down this path, the man steps on something that felt soft. He didn't know what it was, but it caused him to freeze, and before he can even look down and see what he's standing on, he hears rustling coming from the bushes. Just off the trail. She hears it too, and both of them, without saying a word to each other because, again, you gotta remember, they're both really stressed. They haven't let on to the other how stressed they are, but they're both basically ready to leave. So the two of them turn around, and they hide, tail it out of there. He has no idea what he stepped on. They don't know what they heard in the bushes. But they don't care. The anxiety was so high they just wanted to leave. Years later, that man and woman who had this very strange date would actually be married. And they'd be sitting down, watching TV together, and they're flipping through the channels, and they land on an interview with a death row inmate. The interviewer is asking the inmate, "Was there ever a time that you were almost caught red-handed?" And the guy being interviewed says, Yes, one time. I was in the forest up in Provo Canyon one night, and a young couple came walking up the trail. I didn't see them, so I only had a chance to jump into the bushes right next to the trail, and the guy actually stepped on the body of a girl I had just killed. But for some reason, he didn't look down and see what he was standing on, and the two of them didn't notice me just a few feet away from them. They just turned around and walked away. Turns out that young couple had run into one of the worst serial killers of all time, Ted Bundy, before Bundy was executed. He confessed to over 30 murders, but many people believe the true number of victims is much, much higher.
So this was one of Ted Bundy's stories, and the end of this video. If you like this kind of content, please let me know in the comments, and I will make more of these stories to share with you. I'll see you next time.